Happy Monday, Liberty lovers, and if there's one thing that might help you through these dark coronavirus times, it might be getting your regular doses of CBD, always good for calming the mind and body, helping with inflammation, the aches and pains in the joints that those like me that are quickly approaching the age of 40 often find themselves getting. And luckily for you, our amazing sponsors at the North Spokane Hemp Company deliver nationwide. Any order over $50, head over to northspokanecbd.com for all your CBD needs, whether it's flower, although you might want to avoid that if you're worried about the lungs, but they also have tinctures, they have edibles, they have stuff for your dogs if your dogs have achy joints, as my big husky does. So please head over to northspokanecbd.com. Our sponsors can use your help now more than ever during these times, and you're going to want to use your discount code. That's discount code LIONS at checkout for 15% off your order.
Welcome to the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here's your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Claire.
All right, Liberty Kitty Cats. My guest today is an anarcho-capitalist entrepreneur based out of the UK. He is the host of the Michael Cheney Show. I'm very pleased to welcome, for the first time, Michael Cheney. Michael, are you ready to roar? All right,
oh, yes.
There we go. Now that's a roar.
I had to give you a British lion roar, you know?
Yes,
just,
you gotta represent your homeland here, and I think you did a pretty good job, Michael. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
It's going great, man. And, before we get into things, obviously there's a lot going on. Pretty much any guest I had scheduled to talk about a list of topics, we're ending up talking about coronavirus at this point because what else is affecting our lives, in a more intrusive way right now. But I first want to get a bit of your background. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about how this all got started for you? You know, how did you first become interested in libertarian ideas? But I'm also kind of interested in how this intersected with your entrepreneurial path. You know, at what point in there did that intersect with the anarcho-capitalist philosophy?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it started, I guess, probably about 20 years ago. I graduated from university and I got a job straight away working for ExxonMobil, of all people, and it was sold to me as this great program. I started work with these guys and I absolutely hated it. It was just horrendous. It was eating my soul from the inside out. I'd see people working there. The lights had gone out in their eyes. You know, they were just hanging on for retirement. There was so much just, BS politics. And I was just like, this is not what I was sold on. This is not the dream. You know, this was sold as like the ultimate package and this is the way that life should be. And I was like, I've got to get out of here. So I started my own business after 2 years. I quit my job. I've not worked for anybody else since then, back in 2000. And I set up my own internet business. Now, my first kind of introduction, I guess, to sort of government overreach and that kind of thing was I struggled for quite a number of years to get started with the business, but I had a really good year when I finally broke through. And the government here in the UK hit me with a tax bill for several $100,000, which I wasn't expecting because I was completely naive. Even my accountants didn't see it coming. And it almost floored me, because I'd invested a lot of the money, I'd spent a lot of the money, and they came knocking the year after. And I was like, holy crap, like, what am I going to do? So that was my first experience. I then started trying to invest the money offshore, in legal ways to try and stop them getting their hands on it. Fast forward a few years, I then came in touch with Tom Woods, and I know you're familiar with. He's a good friend of mine, and we do quite a lot of business together on the internet, and he sort of introduced me to sort of libertarian ideals, many of which I was kind of operating under without even realizing what libertarianism was. I mean, here in the UK, it's, you could speak to like 20,000 people and unless one of them is me, they won't know what it is in the UK. I mean, it's smaller even than it is in the US. So I'd just not been exposed to it. But Tom sort of introduced me to that. And then last year, halfway through last year, I was doing live streams for my internet business, and I got hijacked by a bunch of libertarians who started ranting taxation is theft at me on my Facebook live streams. And I was like, who the hell are these guys? What is this? Is this some kind of cult or something? But they kind of, what's that? Yeah, kind of. Yeah. And I was kind of intrigued by, what they were saying and the type of people they were. And I got to know a few of them personally. And it started to open my eyes to the power of sort of voluntarism and how people can help one another. And we don't need, this nanny state to look after us. And then shortly after that, sadly, my father passed away, totally out of the blue. He was really fit and healthy. And, he was 75. We thought he had at least 10, maybe 15 more years left in him. And he passed away. And one of the first things that happened is that the government came knocking for around $170,000 of his money that was in his estate. So the laws in the UK are slightly different. I know I've told this story and people in the US go, "Oh, it's ridiculous. Was he like a multi-millionaire?" And I'm like, well, no. I think in the US it's like 11 million is the limit in terms of death tax. Here in the UK it's fairly low. He just worked as a teacher all his life. He was a school teacher for 40 years, worked really hard. He put a lot of money away to the tune of I don't know, like $500,000 US equivalent. I mean, the guy was like, he wouldn't spend money. He would save it all. He was a diligent investor. He was always moving money around. And this was money that he'd already been taxed on, right? Because it was money he'd earned as a salary. He's taxed at source on a salary, as we all are, with income tax. He'd invested that money to look after his family. And the government took another $170,000 out of that money, which it personally didn't bother me financially, but from an ethical point of view and just a principle point of view, it really turned my stomach, and it was really like the final straw for me of the realization that that something has to change, and I'm not playing with this game anymore. I mean, as I say, I'd gone through life quite a while and just not engaged in voting and just didn't trust politicians, period, but things like this started to happen, and as I say, I got exposed to some more sort of libertarian ideals. That it became clear to me that this was a path that I needed to embark on.
Yeah, I really like that. As you said, you were pretty much a libertarian in action and in practice before you really had discovered the philosophy. And It's great to hear that you actually, I know you've worked with Tom a lot. I actually found you through Tom Woods, but it's great to hear that he's the one. I didn't realize he actually did lead you down that philosophical path. So, there is hope for us podcasters out there. We are having an effect on people now.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally, man. Yeah.
And you actually started your own podcast fairly recently, I think in the last year or so, or less than a year or so. I've been checking it out a lot recently. So what inspired you to go from just the business end of things to actually want to have that voice yourself, that philosophical sort of political voice on your own?
It was one of these things that, I'm kind of a spiritual person as well. And, with my dad passing away, even before that happened, my kind of passion for the type of business that I was operating before had waned. And I wasn't really feeling fulfilled with it as I used to. My father passed away as I was being interviewed for the first time on a libertarian podcast. It was, I later learned that it happened at the time. And I kind of just took that and thought, this is sort of calling to me now. This is almost like, it was a wake-up call to me. Obviously, my dad was sort of taken early, if you like. And I kind of thought, well, I want to do something that really lights my fire, and I've done that. And I have, had a lot of passion for the business that I've been operating in for 20 years. But there always felt like there was something missing, like I wasn't quite living my true purpose, if you see what I mean, without getting too deep. And because of all these things happening all at the same time, it kind of led me to think, well, I'm just going to go down this path. So it wasn't really a decision. It wasn't like a conscious, I'm going to get into this. It just happened, doors started opening, and I just thought, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, say what I feel. I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to study a lot, and obviously listen to lots of podcasts and follow people and really try and understand it and try and help other people, like I was, to wake up to it, to see what's actually going on and wake up to reality so they can maybe do something about it.
Yeah, I think we can always use more voices with this stuff. I mean, there is the big joke that goes around now that, pretty much every libertarian has a podcast. But I mean, when I started 6 years ago, I actually started about a month before Tom started his show. At that time, there really were no libertarian podcasts.
I know. Yeah, he's telling me. Yeah.
Yeah, at least no regular ones. So, I mean, it really is. And especially with you in the UK, I mean, it may seem like people like you and me, there might seem like there's a plethora of libertarian podcasts, and there are, but we're still such a small movement and such a small smallly, accepted philosophy on such a small scale, I don't think there's any shortage of the number of voices we can use, particularly more people that are in places where the philosophy is not even, it's even smaller, like you said, than it here is here in the U.S. My friend Anthony Sabaroff is the only other person in the UK I know. He's the host of the Scottish Liberty podcast. He's the only other person besides you in the UK that I know that's a libertarian. So I assume there's a couple more, but it definitely seems to be an area where there's a lot of room for growth.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I should connect with him, actually. I've seen a few of these things on YouTube, I believe. So,
he's great.
Yeah, we're definitely good to connect.
How do you find talking about these ideas in the UK? Because, at least in the history of the United States, the way we're brought up culturally, there is at least that concept of freedom, that concept of liberty, even if it's really not put into practice at the government level or even the personal level in many ways. But at least the conversation is sort of there already to take.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like it's not quite the same in the United Kingdom. So how do you find approaching issues of freedom and liberty in a place where I feel like the police state is almost just presumed in many ways? Would you agree with even what I just said there?
Yeah, I could recount many examples of the the desperate nature of things in the UK. The way that I approach this, I'm almost all my audience is based in the US, but what I do is I bring a different starting point to this. It's almost like a warning shot from the future, and I say, look, this is how bad it is in the UK. This is how it could get in the US. So, for example, a friend of mine was telling me just a couple of days ago what he has to do to buy a gun, okay, in the UK. So there's a myth that you can't buy guns. You can actually buy guns. It's incredibly simple, okay? I'll just walk you through how you have to do it. All you have to do is you apply for a license. I think you wait about 12 months. You cannot buy a handgun. You obviously cannot buy any kind of, assault rifle or anything like that. But you can buy a shotgun. Once you've got the shotgun, you need to lock it in a safe. The safe needs to be wall mounted on a brick wall. You need to have keys to the safe. The keys need to be locked in a separate safe to where the guns are. Nobody but you can have the keys to the safe. Before you even apply for the license, you're going to get visited by the police in your house, and they're going to interview you on why you need the gun and ask you various questions. And they'll also visit you, I think it's once a year, to ensure that the gun is locked in a wall-mounted cabinet with a key that is also stored in a separate safe that nobody else has access to. The ammo needs to be stored separately to the weapon. But yeah, other than that, it's a complete cakewalk to get a gun.
It's just a couple of boxes you got to tick. No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. And obviously, if somebody breaks in, just wait a second. Just give me half an hour. I just got to go through to the first safe.
Right. I was going to say, it almost renders, not almost, it does render the gun, if you store it in the way you're supposed to, essentially useless for home protection, because by the time you need to get to it in an emergency situation, there's just no way you can do it. You have to unlock one safe, get another, get the keys. Brick mounted.
You just end up like throwing the key at somebody or like trying to scratch them with the first key to the first safe. It's completely pointless. But yeah, you can't really defend yourself in the UK. You can't defend your home. Like, I've looked into this. You can't buy pepper spray. Right? You cannot even buy pepper spray in the UK. The only thing that you can buy that they will sell you in the UK is UV spray that you spray the intruder with that puts UV invisible paint on them. So if they happen to walk into a police station that has one of the scanners, they can say, oh yeah, this person must have been... What? Like, what? You'd be better throwing the can at them. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There's nothing you can do. I think the latest research I've done, obviously I've looked into... I shouldn't really say this, but let's just pretend that I've looked into homemade flamethrowers. Right. But you can also, you can buy a crossbow in the UK. That is legal.
Maybe that's your best way to go for self-defense. At least you can just
it's
under the bed and...
Yeah, it's proper kind of, caveman-esque.
As long as there's just one guy and you're a really good shot, you should be fine. Yeah, you can't exactly, do rapid fire with one of those things. Yeah, I don't imagine it's much of a fast reload with a crossbow.
No. But yeah, when I have these conversations with my friends and, talking to people in the UK about these kind of issues and obviously trying to tread lightly to begin with to sort of scope them out and see where they're at and try and introduce them to these ideas, as you say, it's very, very alien to them. They're like, why would you even think this way? Like, why would you be anti-government? It's almost like, whoa, like you're one step away from being a terrorist. It's just, it's unheard of really for people to question it. And I think because of historically and over generations, it's just been ground out of people over here. We've got so little rights over here that people have just kind of rolled over and just accepted it and just resigned to the fact, they don't really see see how bad it is.
Hey there, Liberty Kitties. Time to take a quick time out to tell you about one of our long-time supporters. His name is Tyler Colford, and he goes by the pseudonym Crypto Man. That's his rapping name. That's right. He is a rapper as well. He does some awesome stuff, and he recently produced a track called Free Ross. And the Ross in question is, of course, Ross Ulbricht, the creator of the Silk Road Marketplace, who was sentenced to 2 life sentences for creating that marketplace. Yes, it was a black market indeed of all sorts of things, including drugs, consensual transactions, which libertarians are completely in favor of. There were no victims and there were no crimes as far as we're concerned. So please do check out the track Free Ross. It was just released on Friday, March 27th, the 35th birthday of Ross Ulbricht. And 100% of the proceeds will go to the Free Ross Foundation, which is helping to free Ross and bring more awareness to his situation. Do check out the links. I will put them all over at lionsofliberty.com/freeross for ease of use. You can also pre-order it on Google Play. Again, 100% of the proceeds of this track will be going to help free Ross.
And they sever your ties from your business loved ones and family. Why? New slave labor, they barely pay you. Don't care about work ethic or major in the prison system.
Given the state of things there in the UK, and given the fact that your business is pretty much all online, have you ever considered just the idea of becoming sort of an expatriate from the United Kingdom, of finding a place where there's not quite as much of an ominous police state, although pretty much anywhere you go, there is statism afoot.
Yeah. We tried to move to the US. Not before we had kids, we tried to move to the US. They would not let us in. They don't let business owners in unless they spend $1 million in a deprived area, which you don't get back. It's not like a loan or investment. It's just
in a deprived area. Like you have to spend that money in a specifically deprived area of the United States.
Yep.
Wow.
If you're a business owner, that's really the only way to get in permanently. You can apply for a working visa to get in, but it gets renewed, I think, every year. Sometimes you can get an extension for maybe 3 years. I mean, I do know people that have moved to the US as entrepreneurs, but it's a nightmare. They've got this thing hanging over them. Every 2-3 years, they've got to renew. I know one guy, he's got family. His family has stayed in the States. He was booted out because his visa wasn't renewed, and he ended up spending 6 months back in the UK, had to go to the embassy in the US, finally got a visa again and got back over there. So, yeah, there was no real legitimate way that we could get over there. But yeah, we've certainly looked at moving elsewhere, certainly somewhere warmer. Here in Scotland, we've got everything. We've got nature, we've got, fresh air, we've got, wonderful walking and cycling and hiking and all this good stuff, but we don't have the sunshine. So yeah, my wife and I quite often talk about going somewhere a bit warmer and somewhere that's, as you say, a bit more, embrace freedom a bit more,
Are you guys allowed to enjoy the sunshine right now? Because just recently here in California, we got issued the stay-at-home order or the shelter-at-place order, whatever it may be. You were still allowed to go outside, and you are allowed to leave your house, of course, walk your dog and that sort of thing. But you were, until I think yesterday, still allowed to go to nature trails and hiking. But then they just shut that down because now that nobody can go to work, everybody was flooding the trails, and they were saying that the trails are becoming too full of people. So now we can't even congregate in any way, even in nature. So it's really become, in a matter of weeks, it has become, I was traveling abroad and I came back, and that's when the coronavirus stuff really.
Yeah, I heard you saying that with the NBA.
Yeah,
the
exactly,
NBA game.
Yeah.
You said, yeah.
Yeah, and then it just sort of took off from there. So this has gone from, I was coming home to what I thought was normal California, where I have my normal work and a lot of stuff I do on site. Almost everything I do outside of the podcast is stuff I have to be on site for. So that's all gone. And now I can't even go enjoy a hike. So it's really become quite the situation here in a very short amount of time. But what are things like over there as far as the response to the coronavirus? And I know they are pushing through, but they probably already have. I know in one of your last podcasts, you talked about a bill that was about to go through in the UK regarding coronavirus. But can you tell us what the government is doing in response to things there? We can kind of see how that compares to the Californian response anyway.
They've put that through. They sent a SMS message to everybody in the UK today. Everybody with a cell phone got a message from the government today saying stay at home. Which I don't have my phone to hand, but yeah, they sent a message to everybody's cell phone today. So like 66 million text messages were sent. Stay at home. You must stay at home unless you are one of the exemptions, which are obviously you can go out for medical supplies, you can go out for essential food shopping only, not all the other shops are now shut. you can go out once a day for exercise, and that is it. Yeah.
Are they keeping track of how often you're going to go?
I know. It's like, how are they going to enforce this? I mean, the police have been given the powers apparently to stop people, to fine people, to break up groups of more than two. Like, is that even a group, like two people? But if you're in a group of more than two that are not family members, then theoretically the police can come and fine you and break that up.
Yeah, and as of now, I haven't heard anything about police like physically intervening, at least in California. But I imagine if this continues to go on and on, people are going to start to be like, all right, well, I'm just going to go out with my friends now. This is getting silly. And at that point, I do wonder, are police going to start beating billy clubs to just stop them from just hanging out together? I mean, where does this go?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happens. I mean, it's a 3-phase thing, isn't it? This is how I kind of, trying to deal with it myself mentally. First they ask you. This is what they did in the UK, and that obviously we're British, so we're all polite. And Boris Johnson comes on the TV. Oh, please, would you mind if possibly, perhaps, if it's not too much trouble, could you perhaps stay at home, maybe? Obviously, that didn't work. Particularly in London, people didn't give a crap. So then they go to phase 2, which is tell you. So first they ask you, then they tell you. Oh, you must stay at home. Okay, so more people stay at home and cow down to it. And now we're in the 3rd phase, which is they enforce it. They've given police powers. I mean, over the weekend, there were pubs in Scotland that were still open. They shouldn't have been open because they were still at phase 2. They'd been told by the Prime Minister and the government to shut, but they ignored that because it wasn't legal. So in response to that, on Monday morning, the government basically passed a law that means the police can go in and shut pubs down. So they've moved past asking, they've moved past telling, and now they're in the enforcing stage, which in itself has got sub-stages because, as you rightly said, how can this be enforced at the moment? The police are aware of it. They have the powers. They don't have the physical capability to do it yet. But I think when you see boots on the street and armed, soldiers and whatever, that's when it starts to become real. I wouldn't. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did. I mean, I know, from looking at what's happened in Italy and in France, they started with this kind of curfew, martial law kind of thing. Then they started issuing fines. I mean, they fined thousands and thousands of people in France, hundreds, in some cases, thousands of euros for being out when they shouldn't be out without the right paperwork. You've got to print off paperwork in France to leave your house. And you've got to download it from the government, tick why you're out. Is it medical? Are you helping somebody else? Or whatever it is. And if you haven't got the paperwork or receipt from buying food or buying medical goods, you get fined.
What a lot of people I see saying, well, like, look, this is just what we have to do for a temporary amount of time just to get through this virus. Then we can return to normal. What my fear is, and I'm sure you share a similar fear, is that we're not really going to return to normal, because whenever there is a massive power grab or just a display that the government has this sort of power to just shut down businesses for what they say is, I'm not claiming it's not a virus, but what I am wondering is how much of this was pre-planned power grabs and the virus is now an excuse for, as opposed to what is a quote-unquote legitimate response to the virus. Where do you see this going in terms of these powers that are taking place, whether it's in the UK or all over the world? I mean, I don't think there's a country that's left untouched from some sort of lockdown of some kind. I'm sure there's a few out there, but where do you see this going in terms of the powers that are being put in there, and whether they are actually going to be as temporary as most politicians are acting like they're going to be?
The most worrying thing to me is not necessarily the lockdowns, it's not the quarantines, it's the other completely unrelated laws that are getting swept in at the same time. The end-to-end encryption stuff that they're trying to put through at the moment is on the table. This Earn It Act, the Earn It Bill, which is going to give the government in the US a backdoor to access end-to-end encrypted messages on Facebook, on WhatsApp, on Twitter, and things like that. It's got nothing to do with coronavirus. They tabled it last week. They're currently talking about this right now. If coronavirus was that big a deal, why would they even be making time for this? It's just crazy. So there's a lot of that going on, not just in the US, in the UK as well. Things that are being tabled, been put through because it's a great time to bury bad news.
Sure.
Never waste a good crisis. So in terms of the lockdown, obviously we can all argue to the ends of the earth about is it justified? How serious is the virus? Nobody knows. I mean, the piece of information I'm clinging onto at the moment, I only found this out on Saturday. It was a piece on the BBC website, and it was talking with the chief medical officer of the UK. So this is the guy who's advising the government what to do. Throughout this crisis here in the UK, the government has said they are making all their decisions based on science and what this lead scientist is telling them. He's obviously collating everything from the scientists in the UK, doing all the studies and the modeling. The chief scientist, this guy, said on Saturday on the BBC website, he does not know how many of the deaths that they are telling us about every day, he does not know how many of them have been caused by COVID-19, or to what extent COVID-19 has caused those deaths. Now, that is a huge...
Seems like an important bit of information.
It's a huge statement. It was buried away on the website. It was on Saturday. This article had the title, Is the government over-egging coronavirus? Right? And I saw this on the BBC, which is normally a mouthpiece of government or whatever. I thought, wow, this is like crazy. I've never seen any kind of dissident piece on mainstream media. Let me have a look at this. I read it briefly. I went back to check it in detail on Sunday and do some research. They changed the title of the article. So it was no longer, is the government over-egging coronavirus? It was now called, here's what we don't know about coronavirus. They then added a disclaimer to the top of the article in bold. All of the government measures that have been put in place are completely in line with necessity to save lives. So it was almost like a bit of a U-turn from what I'd seen on Saturday. I don't know if some sort of editorial decision had come in. But as I say, essentially what they're saying here is they have no idea. The lead scientist driving all the decisions in the UK has no idea how many of the deaths that they're reporting on a daily basis have actually been caused by coronavirus, or to what extent the deaths were caused by coronavirus. So to the conspiracy, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but to conspiracy theorists, they could take that and say, well, that means it could mean zero. It could mean none of these deaths. Because every year in the UK, 600,000 people die from old age. Right. And what he's basically said in that statement is, we don't know how many of these current deaths are within that 600,000 or additional.
Sure. In any given population or society, there's a given percentage of the population that are at such an age or just a state of health that any little thing is going to push them over the edge, whether it is a coronavirus type cold or a flu or something else. And again, I'm not a medical expert. I'm not claiming that coronavirus isn't worse than the flu. It seems to be in some ways, maybe more viral at least. But again, the people making these decisions about the economy, they are not experts either on how what they're doing is affecting the economy. They might be experts on epidemiology or that sort of thing, or how viruses spread. But these are the people that are making prescriptions for entire segments of the population and entire segments of the globe, it seems, where we're just shutting down the economy, ignoring those effects. Because at some point, if you really just shut down the economy, the effects of that are going to be trickling down to so many other areas that you're going to be killing more people than the virus ever could hope to kill.
Yeah, I mean, one of the key areas that I see that happening is in depression and suicide. I mean, it's the number one killer of males aged, I think, up to sort of 25 in the UK is suicide. So you lock people down, you stop them from leaving their home, you stop them from contacting their friends, you stop them from getting sunshine, getting exercise. I mean, yeah, it could be huge. It could be huge knock-on effect. And again, I'm like you. I've got no idea. I mean, if the lead scientist doesn't know, how am I going to know how bad this coronavirus is, right? But what the fact is that they don't know. That for me is enough to raise a huge question mark about whether or not it's serious. My gut feel at the moment, and this is complete guesswork and complete hunch, is that this virus is something that is taking out the older population slightly before their time. That's my gut feel on this, is that for this, say, 600,000 in the UK, it's maybe accelerating all of those deaths over a 12-month period that would have happened anyway into a much shorter time frame, which would overload the health system and would obviously then cause more deaths indirectly from people that have got non-COVID issues that can't get seen. So I understand that. I think that's what's happening. They can't come out and say that, because if they came out and said this is what's happening, these people are going to die anyway. Yes, they're going to be taken before their time, and that's tragic. They may be losing a few days, weeks, or months. But the main issue is it's going to overload the system and whatever. I don't think people would be staying at home. So I think they've got to make a play of this. They've got to beef it up in terms of a psychological fear factor so that people do stay at home to try and prevent what's going on. So I see it from their side as well. Mm-hmm. But as I say, at the end of the day, they're making huge decisions here that it's the classic kind of bad economics. They're looking at one factor here. They're not looking at all the repercussions over the short term and long term of all the individuals involved in the decisions that they're making. And they're making a decision based on one group of people, and they don't even have the data on what that decision is. They're making a decision on that, and it's not even, it doesn't even exist. They don't even know to the extent these deaths are being caused by COVID-19. So it's a crazy situation. Obviously, they're trying to, playing devil's advocate, they're trying to, prevent worst case scenario, and all that stuff. Personally, I don't think there's any kind of dastardly deed going on in terms of the lockdown. I don't really see it, other than, as you say, it's a kind of a power play and putting people in their place and, really sort of showing that, you are the little person and we control everything. But I don't think this is going to be, the repercussions of the quarantine will be put in effect. I think it's more of a magic, like, look at this over here, look at this over one side of the stage. And meanwhile, when we're putting all this other crap through over here, when you're not looking,
Yeah, I mean, here in the U.S., they're batting around this huge relief bill, and they're trying to insert basically anything any politician has been trying to put through in the last years. I mean, basically most of the new Green Deal they're trying to just insert into this coronavirus relief bill out of nowhere. I mean, they're trying to put in everything they've ever wanted, which does speak a little more to the idea that, all right, one of two things are possible. These are the truly most evil people on the planet, and they really do know how bad the virus is, and still want to do all this other stuff unrelatedly.
Right.
Or they are just they know that it's maybe not as bad, but they want to use the crisis for other means. I guess it could be both. It could both be true. It could be really bad, and they could be so terrible that they just still want to do other stuff in the meantime. But I'm curious if you could speak on a little bit how much worse off a country like the UK is and how much less prepared they are for a situation like this because of how nationalized the healthcare system is, because of how centrally controlled it is. Whereas at least in countries that have a little bit more of a free market, they're able to at least be a little more reflexive and respond. I mean, here in the U.S., they are starting to allow more testing to be produced, which is at least the government doing a little less. They still aren't allowing home tests, which could be available tomorrow if they were allowed. So there are so many ways that government at every level hinders these things. But I know in the UK, it's a little bit more of an extreme. So how is that having an effect on the entire system as a whole? Like you said, it's going to affect people sooner than later, not just people that have coronavirus, but that need anything at all done if the system gets so overwhelmed.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of one of those trains in India where you've got like 1,000 people inside each carriage, and then you've got like 5,000 on the roof. Right. That's the UK health system before coronavirus. Like right. there are people dying in corridors. There are not enough beds for people in the health system before this started. They're not paying the nurses enough. They're not paying the staff enough. They're overworking them. Lots of people are dying alone in hospital because there's not enough staff to look at. This is all like, before coronavirus, this was all happening. And of course, we're all paying for it. I mean, I got an email from the government about 4 weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer, explaining a breakdown of a particular year and how much money I'd paid for all basically how much money they'd taken from me in tax and where it had all gone. And I did an episode on it. It was extremely irate, and people found it very amusing. But it was basically, I think I ended up paying $30,000 US in a year for towards health. So 30,000 of my personal dollars that I'd earned was taken from me and given to the health system in that year. Now, that's one thing, right? If I use it, and you can go in, you can get seen by a doctor fairly quickly, and obviously. Everyone's like, yeah, but it's free. You don't pay for it. It was like, well, no, it costs me $30,000 a year.
Look at this note. You pay for it.
Yeah,
for sure.
You definitely pay for it. But the other thing is you can't get seen quickly. So I've had this kind of medical issue that I've been undergoing since about early February. I've been trying to get seen. If I waited for the NHS system, obviously I'm talking separate to coronavirus right now. This is just the health system before coronavirus. We'll talk about that in a sec. But for me to try and get seen by the NHS for what is quite a serious issue to me personally, it would have taken me several months to get an appointment with a specialist. So what I do is I pay $30,000 because I don't have a choice because they put a gun to my head or imprison me. And then I pay for private healthcare. So I pay for private insurance every month additionally, which is about, $100, $150 a month that I pay out of my own pocket again, so that I can actually get seen when something goes wrong rather than have to wait several months. Now, I'm fortunate. I'm one of the lucky ones, right? Because I've actually got a business. I've got enough money to be able to do this. Most people don't. They're getting fleeced for this, and they're paying way, way over the odds. And it comes down. I mean, on average, I can't remember the exact sum, but I think it's something in the region of $4,000 to $5,000. I think on average, every person in the UK, every working person in the UK pays for healthcare in taxes per year. So it's not a free system. This is not and it's not even a good system. It doesn't work. It's overloaded. There are not enough beds. When the National Health Service was started many decades ago, there were hundreds of thousands of beds, and the population in the UK is a fraction of what it is today. There are now about a third of the number of beds that there were, and obviously the population has probably tripled or quadrupled. So even before coronavirus came around, you had long waiting times, months in some cases to be seen, months to be seen to get major surgeries, people left in corridors, waiting rooms, and this kind of stuff. So it was bad even before coronavirus hits. Now, what's happening is they're having to bolster this. It's creaking at the seams. They're panicking like crap. I just read today they've converted one of the arenas down in London into a makeshift hospital using the army to try and create more beds. Today they've asked for 100,000, I think it's 100,000 volunteers to work for the NHS. So just people step forward if you want to work for the health service. They've recalled thousands of people that are retired because there's not enough people. So they've recalled people that are previously, retired and trying to bring them back to work.
Who are, of course, the most at-risk population for getting hurt for actually getting hurt by the coronavirus. So how many more of those people are now going to be exposed to this thing, which wouldn't have hurt them if they were just able to stay home and stay retired? Yeah.
So I mean, as I say, the whole system was creaking like crazy before, and now, I mean, the wheels are just coming off. They're panicking, and they're trying to get physical labor and stuff from all over the place to try and, shore up the defenses.
Well, Michael, I don't want this whole show to be a downer because there is a lot of there is a lot of hope. There is a lot of reason to be optimistic out there in the world today, even with all this terrible stuff going on. And but the hope, I think that what the biggest focus I want to do in this coming year here is to make people realize our best hope in doing these things is not by. I think we should reform the government if we can. I'm active in the Libertarian Party here. We advocate to dismantle a lot of this stuff, but the idea of that being the pathway to fixing things is probably not the most viable one. Whereas taking our account for our own personal lives and our own personal freedom and building our own wealth so that we don't have to be as affected by this stuff, so we can be like you, where even if they take $30,000 from us and we can't do anything with it, we can still get our healthcare that we need to because we have that sort of financial flexibility. And I think, especially right now, a lot of people, especially right here in Los Angeles, where almost everybody I know, or a large portion of people I know, including myself, work in the film and television industry. Everything we do is on site or on a set. That doesn't even exist anymore. So a lot of people suddenly find themselves without their normal sources of income. Luckily, I have some podcasting to keep me busy in this time. But I'm curious if you could kind of just break down a few tips you'd have to people about becoming an entrepreneur, about sort of just maybe just more on the mindset level. People that thought, well, I just like going to my job. I don't want to work for other people. I don't care if I work for somebody else. Now, people that might not have previously had the entrepreneurial mindset that now find themselves in a position where, well, you better get it because I think especially, I think the economy was going this way anyway, but coronavirus and all this hysteria is going to push it even more so to a place where people are working more remotely, where people are going to have to be generating multiple streams of income on their own. So what would be the first place you would start just from a mental point of trying to convert your mindset from I need someone to come pay me and bring me somewhere to do work, as opposed to creating that wealth and creating that work for myself?
Right. Well, I actually think this is a really cool area that I'm hoping is going to backfire for the government in terms of these quarantines and lockdowns, which is giving people time and space away from the rat race, away from working for the man, and actually realizing that life goes on and that the major important things don't cost that much. Like you can go out, obviously not only once a day here in the UK, but you can go out for a walk. You can go out for spend time with your family, spend time with your kids.
Do they tell you how long your walk can be, by the way? Like, can you just take one really long 6-hour walk?
Everybody saw that. I was like, oh yeah, I'll just go for 5-hour walk. Yeah, there's no
my walk. So
yeah, I'm still my walk officer. I'm still going here. But I'm sure that I'll probably follow with tomorrow's announcement. They'll probably put it onto steps.
Walks must be 30 minutes or less.
Yeah, they'll give you a Fitbit and they'll implant a chip, and you've walked too many steps, and then it'll automatically fire you back to your little quarantine
I mean,
zone.
I know it's a joke, but the technology is all there where they could pretty much do it tomorrow and especially it sounds like in the UK, it might be accepted and embraced very quickly if they suggested that.
Yeah, there'd probably be a number of people voting for it already. Yeah, I mean, with cell phones, I mean, they're already tracking all that stuff.
Track our steps.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this could be a big area for people because I think it might open a lot of people's eyes to what they can do on their own and how they can operate when they've got autonomy and how much more freedom they can get in their life when they actually take it upon themselves to generate their own revenue and, drive forward for their own sort of financial freedom and their own financial success rather than, as you say, relying on somebody paying them. For me, the mindset is very, very critical. You've got to have that right. Not everybody is made to be an entrepreneur. Some people just can't do it. It's, I've learned this to my cost trying to train people and coach people over the years. Some people just don't have it, and that's totally fine. But for those of you that are thinking about it, you've had a little spark, maybe you've got an idea, or you thought, yeah, I wouldn't mind giving that a go, or it just intrigues you in some way. That's a sign that it probably is for you. If it freaks you out, if it scares you, you think, no, I could never do that. Quite a lot of people, when I say I've worked from home and I've got my own business for 20 years, they're like, oh, I could never do that. I could never. How do you motivate yourself? You work at home, you've got the TV, and if you're an entrepreneur and you don't work, you don't get paid. So the motivation,
it's pretty good motivation.
Yeah, it's not like rocking up to work and doing bare minimum and get paid, or as I used to do nothing and try to get paid.
I would say that's far more motivating than going to a job where your only motivation is to do whatever you need to do just to get that paycheck coming still.
Yeah.
But that's essentially, I mean, obviously a lot of people want to do more of their job and move up and this sort of thing. But for many, many people, that is all the job is. It is a way, it is what can I do to just make sure that check still keeps coming. And so that's a totally different mindset from the entrepreneurial mindset where you're always going to want to be growing, always going to be wanting to try new things and do more because you're doing it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of, forward thinking kind of learning, constantly learning new things, constantly sort of reinventing yourself and getting into new areas, which is kind of why, really embracing the, libertarian movement and, doing my own podcast and things like that is constantly to be learning new things, pushing myself in new directions. So yeah, the mindset is important. I would say, for anybody that's trying to start out at this, it's really having that big reason why. You've got to have a massive reason why you want to do this, because it is going to be tough. It is going to be hard. It's far harder than a job. It's far riskier than a job, but the benefits are huge. I'm quite a big risk taker. I would say I'm probably like a 7 out of 10 in terms of risk, across the board. My late father was probably a 4 out of 10. Very, very sort of conservative, with his money and very kind of did not just like taking risks at all. And when I was working that job, remember I said I had that job for 2 years. I hated it. But I had this idea, I had this germ of an idea, the seed of an idea about the internet, but I didn't have the balls to do it. I was scared about doing it because I wasn't making anywhere near the salary that I was making, right? And obviously I had debts, I had mortgages to pay, food to put on the table. And I was making some money with what I was doing on the internet, but not enough to make that leap. And I spoke to my dad and he just said, do it, just do it, take the chance. Otherwise you regret it, just see what happens. And that was the big turning point for me because I thought, well, if he's saying do it and he's like totally risk averse, I've got to do it, And it's obviously different if you're in different stages of life. If you've got kids, you've got dependents. I didn't have kids at that point, but now is the ideal time. We've got time, as you've said yourself. You're using this time in the quarantine to learn new things and expand and use the free time that you've got, use it to your advantage. Don't just, sit on Call of Duty or, watch Friends reruns, whatever. Now is the perfect time to explore this. Maybe it's not for you, but do it now while it's not going to cost you any more than what's currently happening. It's not like you're going to be put in a separate quarantine of, you've already locked down.
If you've already gotten locked down and whether you've lost your income or not, you're in a position where you can you have two options. You can either sit there and be upset about it and just be sad and just wait to hope that someone lets you out eventually, lets you out of the house, lets you go for a longer walk, lets you go back to your job, or you can start working on other things. The worst, the best, or worst or best, I don't know. Either way, if the worst case scenario is that you develop new skills and get your job back, I mean, that's still a good scenario. If that's the worst case scenario, there's still no downside here.
Yeah. Well, I see that happening. I see a lot of people that kind of recognize this as an opportunity. There's huge swathes of people in the world right now that are panicking, that are worried, rightly so, financially worried and worried about their health and so on. But I think the entrepreneurs, this is going to entrepreneurs, because people will see this as an opportunity. You've got time alone. You've got time without distraction, if you can obviously turn off the media for a bit. And you've got time. You know, we don't have time in our lives normally. We're like, going off to work, eating and maybe watch an hour of TV and collapse to sleep and repeat and then get wasted on the weekend or whatever. We don't have much time to think and plan and strategize. What are we doing in our lives? Who are we? What do we want to achieve? What are we trying to become? What legacy do we want to leave? What difference do we want to make? This is an opportunity that people can face, that they can face head on here with this lockdown scenario, and almost, embrace it as a challenge to come out the other side in a better shape. As you say, even if they end up going back to work, they might have more skills. It might have put a light bulb on where they think, well, yeah, we'll go back to work because it's now money and it's guaranteed and it's steady. But I've now got this a little spark inside me. And I know that I'd rather be doing that. I know that I could do that. And I think if that's all it does, if that's all that the little research that you do does in this period, it's been well worth it, because it could set you on a trajectory where in a year, 2 years' time, you decide, as I did, just to sack off the whole 9-to-5 existence and just do your own thing. Because in terms of talking about freedom and liberty, that there's very few things that you can do in your life that you have control of that will give you that sense of liberty than being your own boss, generating significant amounts of income that you can control, and making the decisions that shape your destiny and not having other people be the sort of puppet master.
Yeah, I remember when I was 24 years old and I got fired from a job, and I thought it was the end of the world. I really thought it was the end of my whole universe, that one day I had a job, the next day I didn't, and I just couldn't even comprehend. I mean, every job I ever had, I had kept and done well at, and this one, something else happened, and I really had a panic moment. But what happened was it really made me think outside my box, and I started making phone calls, talking to people, trying to get into other areas, and it really ended up leading me. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, because if I didn't get fired from that job at that time, I might have stayed down this path that I wasn't really that happy with, but I might have just kept going along because it was a paycheck, and et cetera, going along to get along. But that sort of sense of panic, that moment of panic, led me down a different path that I became so much more happier with, and I think was such a better way to end up going. So I had to take that strategy and turn it into something better. So the best I can hope out of this situation is that something similar can happen to millions, tens of millions of people. I mean, there's so many people that are being affected by this that I can only hope that most of those people, or a percentage of those people, do see this as an opportunity, do take the chance to think outside the box, to connect to people and connect to, just different skills that they hadn't thought of before. And even if this all comes back to quote unquote normal in 2, 3, 4 weeks, even if those people just go down that path a little bit, like you said, and set off that spark, I mean, I think we might come out of this so much better off in many ways. So I think that's kind of the best we can hope for to come from this.
Yeah. I think this is a big, it's a big plus point from all of this. It's not, not just a spin that, that I'm putting on this. I do think it has a big potential to make people realize that life still goes on without all of that stuff. Okay, they've forced us to be in our homes, but now we're separate to them. We're separate to that game. We're separate to that machine. We're separate to that system and that mechanism, and we can. In a way, it's kind of bizarre, but now we actually have, in one sense, we've got a little bit more freedom in one way, because we're not at work. We've got time to think. We've got access to the internet, and we can expand our horizons of what we can actually make possible. If we have the right mindset, as you say. Obviously, most people will be in a state of panic and fear, and when can I get back to work and everything else. You can't do anything. I'm a big believer in not arguing with reality. Don't argue with what is. It's the greatest cause of stress. But it's raining. Oh my God. I've just
this just isn't fair, Michael. This just isn't fair.
Yeah, it just isn't. And people go through life like that. I'm like, just look at what is. Okay, that's how it is. Crap. Yeah, fair enough. What can you do? What can you actually control? At the moment, there's very little that we can control. But what we can control is how we use our time and what we look at when we go online. So you can control, obviously, what you're thinking about and what you're researching online. You can use this to try and spot opportunities, start studying entrepreneurship, start getting a foot in the door and see if it's for you. And maybe it would grow into something down the line.
Well, Michael, I'm glad we could turn a lot of the gloomy talk and news of police states and crippling healthcare systems into a more positive message, because I really think that is this is what I want to do with this podcast in this time. I want to inspire people. I want to continue to inspire people, not just down the philosophy of liberty, as I've been doing for so many years, but in terms of taking charge of their own lives and kind of finding that spark that we've been talking about. So I hope this and many other conversations that you and I will have with other people down the road will help to do just that. So before I let you go here, Michael, why don't you just take a quick second to plug away on anything you've got going on? I know you've got a whole lot of going on, but anything specific you'd like to plug and let people know where they can find your show and anything else you've got in the works.
Sure. I'll just say, if anybody wants to check out my show, it's at michaelcheneyshow.com. I do an episode Monday through Friday with a focus obviously on liberty and also on entrepreneurship, talking to you about how bad things are in Britain so that you know what might be coming down the pipe to the US. So it's michaelcheneyshow.com.
All right, Michael, keep a track of this guy. You're going to be hearing a lot from him coming down the pike. I'm pretty sure of that. Michael Cheney, it's been an absolute pleasure. Keep up the great work. Keep on roaring.
Yeah, you too. All the best.
Take care, Michael. All right, my friends, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Michael Cheney, an awesome guy. He was an absolute blast to talk to, and I think this guy is such a great mind, not just for libertarian ideas, but for entrepreneurship, the kind of things libertarians really need to be focusing on, especially in these coronavirus times where, quote-unquote, jobs are not necessarily a guarantee, but you can become your own job provider, so to speak, if you can work your way into some kind of entrepreneurial situation. And that's not going to be for everybody. It's not easy, but it's something we should all be thinking about and putting a lot of time into. And I think if you follow Michael Cheney, you're going to get a lot of great tips on that sort of thing. So please do check out the Michael Cheney Show. I'll, of course, link to that in today's show notes. This is episode 446, so you'll find that over at lionsofliberty.com/446. I want to also remind you guys about the work we are doing with our friends at DonorSee. Our friend Greg Glyer over there has put together a great program to help people being affected all over the world, particularly the third world, with the effects of coronavirus. There are so many ways people are affected by this, many ways that you're not even thinking of. Just getting hand sanitizer to people in poor countries is becoming more and more difficult. So he has put together a series of projects, which you can find over at DonorSee.com/coronavirus. Feel free to check those out. Donate to anything that you like that looks like something you'd like to support. The great thing about DonorSee is you get video updates of all the people you're helping, so you can actually see the money that you send being put to work. It's really an amazing thing. And even $1 or $2 helps with these causes. A lot of these causes only have a $200, $300, $400, $500 need at the moment, and really $1 or $2 each. That really does help. And another way you can help, if you support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Lions of Liberty for at least March and April, perhaps longer, we are going to be donating 10% of our Patreon proceedings to DonorSee for this coronavirus project, and we hope to give you guys updates about the people that we are specifically helping with DonorSee. Of course, a couple of years ago, Lions of Liberty listeners helped to build a house for a woman in Africa who is in need, and she had a home, and she thanked our listeners on video. It's really just an amazing thing to see, and you can do that by helping out either directly over at DonorSee, DonorSee.com/coronavirus, or by supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty, knowing that 10% of your money, your contributions to help us grow in these times, will also be helping those out there in need. So please do check those out. That's about all I've got this week, or it's at least all I've got today, because I have been doubling down on content a bit. This past weekend, I released a live stream I did with Mike Brancatelli, a special bonus episode where we talked about all things Corona, how to stay sane in the age of coronavirus, how to deal with lockdowns, and this sort of thing. So be sure to click back in your feed and check that out if you missed it. And of course, the rest of the week will be populated by our standard lineup. You've got Brian coming back at you on Wednesday with Electric Liberty Land, his weekly shot of comedy, culture, and liberty, while John Odie Odermatt will wrap things up on Friday with his hard-hitting and always inspiring look at the broken criminal justice system on Felony Friday. But keep an eye on that podcast feed, because like I said, I'm doing a lot more content. I've got a couple live streams scheduled next week. I'm doing one with Mikkel Thorup from Escape Artist, also one with Matt from the Jason Stapleton program talking about coronavirus. You want to follow the Lions of Liberty Facebook page. I'll be streaming everything to that Facebook page during these times when I'm doing these interviews, especially when they're about coronavirus and the effects it's having on our society all around the world. So stay tuned for that stuff. All of it will eventually be released to the public public most likely, but in the meantime, our patrons will always get this content first. So as soon as this stuff is up, as soon as I grab it, the audio, I upload that to Patreon so our patrons can easily listen to this stuff and check it out. So we are doubling down in so many ways during these times. I'm locked down essentially here in California. I can't go to work, so I'm here going to be doing a lot more content for you guys, and trying to really give you guys some entertainment and some things to ponder, I suppose, if you're on lockdown as well, or even if you're not. Until next time, my friends,
Live long and live free.